when Bill was growing, oh, I suppose in high school, he had taken his BB gun and had, which had been a Christmas present, and he knocked down a nest, and there were baby birds in the nest. And his father was a nature lover and was very sorry that Bill had done this. So he told Bill he was very sorry and that he thought it shouldn't have happened, and now that it did, that he should see if he could take over this responsibility that he had taken away from these 3 young birds. And Bill was very sorry also that it had happened, listened to his father, and worked very hard, starting with the day and the night, to feed these crows that were now his pets. They grew up very quickly, as babies do, and they truly had become very calm, but very getting in trouble too. Bill had no way to really chastise them, but he put in a lot of runs to the store to get people milk because as they were full grown, they still lived around his home. They would come and meet the bus when he was coming home from school, and sometimes would land on his arm if he held it out coming home and walking along, or just fly along above him. They truly did like bright objects and took things that they might find, and he knew that they were in their nests. They were great favorites of his, and unfortunately one of them got shot, and I remember that part of the story, but I don't remember what happened to the other 2. But he had them for quite some time, and they were quite a community favorite, but also a community nuisance. As I said, they got in trouble. At that time, we had milk bottles left on the front porch with those cardboard lids that they could pry up, and they would take out the lids in the milk bottle, and they would drink away until they'd had their fill. So they'd say, "Billy, they did it again," and he was always called Billy in his hometown. And he would take his funds and run down to the store and replace their bottles of milk. But he loved his crows, and one of his granddaughters did the coffee holder for him to have on the table beside his chair, and the other one did a picture. Granddaughter did it would have been his granddaughter too, that did a picture of his black crow. So that's why we have those in our home. World War I. And on the bottom you can see where it was made, the size it is, and some other information. But the sides were just a container for their powder and shells. And so it started out because they collected these properties from their battlefields, and they worked on them in their trenches with tools that they had with them that were their bayonet and their knife, fork, and spoon, or whatever they had to eat with, anything they might have with them. And it was simply done over the hours that they had to wait, and also in the hospitals when they were well enough to do something, but not well enough to go home as yet or to go back to battle. And they made all kinds of things, cigarette lighters, little boxes, little tiny boxes, crosses, all kinds of things. But in the shells, they made a picture on the outside of the shell Some of them indented, some of them quite beautiful and very detailed, others just the name of a battle. But he got started collecting those, and I have given all of the smaller pieces to my 6 children, but I still have the shelves that we filled our, or 2 shelves on our bookcases with.
I think it's remarkable. How I felt when you showed them to me was there's something about the triumph of the human spirit needing to express beauty even in the midst of, a grave or dark situation. So here they are in the midst of war and creating beauty among artifacts of war.
And that's a very nice and a very lovely observation. And many people don't know about Trenchard. They don't know how many things that they thought of that they made. And for one of our shells was made evidently by a doctor, and it has his symbol. And so there in war, he was very proud to be serving in that way, evidently.
Wow, well, I'd never heard of Trenchard until you taught me about it. So that's just such a gift for me to be able to learn about that, and to learn about it not by reading about it in a book, by actually seeing it and holding it. But I'd never heard of it.
Well, a lot of people haven't. I don't know I don't know where it died down or why or whether it has. I just don't know the answer to any of those.
Do you believe there's many paths up the same mountain to God? What about people who have not found Christ? Who are Jewish or Buddhist or Hindu or Muslim?
I like to believe that there are other paths for them, because I cannot believe all the people that would miss the opportunity to go to heaven if they were not recognized as well.
How has being a Christian shaped your life?
I think I always, with my husband, faced my life with confidence, and felt that if I needed to do something, he would be with me and I would get it done. I have felt that it helped to keep me on the straight and narrow, although I was not a radical person by any means. But I always felt he was there for guidance. I knew my mother and father were comfortable growing up in our house with a religion, and that made me comfortable in the religions, even though, as I say, I didn't worry whether they were Baptist or Methodist. Both families, especially my dad's, grew up as religious, caring people and stayed in the same community, and so knew each other very, very well. And so it was a very secure home that I had, and I think much of that was due to the fact that we grew up in a home that wanted to have education and did have religion.
Who was on the phone the most of your 6 kids?
Well, no one too long, because their father wouldn't let them be, but we did have an extension, or the cord would stretching and be able to shut a door. He would not, I don't know that they had a limit, but if he was waiting for a call, it had a limit. They were to not make it short. And he got calls from all over, and they obeyed that. We always had to answer it in a certain way. It was to residents, so-and-so speaking, because he wanted them to be polite, because you never knew who it might be. And I had my lecture. I was always supposed to, when he called and said, "I'm sorry, but I won't get home until late tonight," I was always supposed to just say very charmingly, "Well, thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate your call," or something of that sort, you know, that I wasn't supposed to say, "Well, haven't been home for dinner for 5 nights this week already." You know, I wasn't supposed to answer back. General Motors ruled, I guess.
That was Bill's rule. He told you how to respond.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was always supposed to say, "Thank you for your call," or "Well, I'm glad you called," or, you know, and just be very accepting.
Yeah. Was he was very accepting as well, though.
Yes.
He was. Did you cook? Did you like to cook?
I cooked, and I had a lot of good recipes, and they made a nice quantity, and had leftovers, some of them, but my leftovers usually disappeared when I wasn't looking. But yes, I like to cook, I like to bake, I let the children help, and they grew up, well, one of my daughters doesn't really, she says, "I've never cooked, I just warm." And that's what she's done. But I enjoyed it. I had a lot of recipe books.
What was your favorite thing to make?
Oh, I liked what we called noodle strudel, and I liked one that was made with pounded steak and potatoes and onion rings and mushroom soup poured over everything, and all baked together, because it gave you your whole meal except your salad all at once. So I think that and my noodle strudel were my favorites. I tried they had a popular ad in a magazine at one time, and it was 7 layers of Jell-O, each one a different kind, and you made them in tube pan and let it set, and then sliced it, and that you had this beautiful slice of 7 different colors of Jell-O, and I thought that looked really good. So I had bridge club at my home that time I saw it, and I made it, and I just was very pleased. I did it exactly as it told me to do. And of course, I was all ready to serve, so I took it out of the pan, and it collapsed from the center out. So I never did have that recipe.
I thought you were going to say, I took it out and it was all one color and it was gray.
No, I had the colors, but it just collapsed like this from the inside out. And there I was with
no dessert. Did you serve it anyway?
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure. Put a little Cool Whip on it, and everything's great, right?
Absolutely. But I did never make it again.
If you could read only one book in your life other than the Bible, what would it be?
I absolutely don't know. I loved reading a series of books. I enjoyed that. and I've enjoyed several series down through life. But when I was young, I didn't read bibliographies. As I've gotten older, I've added those to my reading. I just don't know, because I've found something to enjoy even in the... I have trouble not finishing a book. Once in a great while, I will say, no, I won't finish this, but I just figure, I don't know, I just think it tells us so many things. I'm still learning things out of books.
Do you have a favorite song or musical group or artist? Contemporary?
No, and I don't even know the contemporary. I was still back there in my era.
Who was your favorite back in the day?
Oh, let me see. I loved Harry James and his band and music. Benny Goodman in college I liked very much. But I like some Western songs too, because I love their content on the words. I think they express themselves so interestingly in songs. So I like many kinds.
Did you and Bill dance?
We did. His sister did the nicest thing. She was 5 years older than he. She did not get to go to college. She was sent to business school. Again, the money was a problem. She always wanted to go to college, and she went back to college at 80. And she was in the midst of college and loving it, and died of cancer. But when Bill was going to come to Purdue for his birthday present, she gave him dance lessons. And he was so embarrassed by this that no one of his friends even knew it. And he would slip there and take the dance lesson, and he didn't tell anyone. He was very embarrassed by all this. But by the time he got to college, he could dance, and we did. He was president of his fraternity, and that entitled him to attend anyone's dance and all dances. And we didn't go to other dances a lot, but we did go to some that had the great bands, which we enjoyed at that time so very much. And my only time that I didn't have a wonderful time at the dance, was over at the sorority house getting ready, and a sister came rushing in, and she said, "Gee, I've got to borrow your dress tonight and your shoes." She said, "I'm having a blind date and he's shorter than I am." And so I switched, or gave her mine, and wore something else. And at the dance before that, we had just sat and talked a lot with some other couples. And I had said on the way home, I had a wonderful time, but I wish we could have danced a little bit more. And he said, "Oh, did you miss the dancing?" And I said, "Well, we didn't dance quite as much as I had hoped." And we went to the next dance, and he was determined that we would dance every dance. Of course, he was teasing me about it. And I had worn these high heels that she had traded with me for that dance, and my feet were just killing me. And that was the only dance I didn't enjoy, and that was, what do they say, what you ask for, be careful what you ask for. So after that, I was careful what I asked for. I am holding a bowling pin that is from the Purdue bowling alleys. And my mother helped me have this. When I liked bowling. That was an individual sport that I really enjoyed. At that time, if you went bowling, you had to set your own pins, and so you had a group, hopefully, and traded, but you would actually sit back there at the side of the cage, and you would set your own pins. Well, Purdue grew up, and there were more and more students coming, and they decided they needed to remodel the bowling alley, which was separate at that time from the pool hall. And at that time, too, girls could not go into the pool hall, but they could go bowling. So Mother heard that they were enlarging and changing the downstairs bowling pin, bowling alleys, and the pool hall, and enlarging them. And she somehow knew somebody, or they were selling them off, and it was in the paper. I don't know how she found out. But when Christmas came that year, I had a pin from the bowling alley. And the reason was that she had seen that they were going up so that she could get one. And that's where I met Bill, who turned out to be my husband. After the war, I had dated a boy in high school for about 2.5 years. And he was a very nice young man in town. That was one thing. My dad was high school principal, and he always knew who I was dating. But I had been dating, his name was Herbert, called him Herb, and we'd been dating for about 2.5 years. And of course, when I heard I was going to be gone my senior year and Herb would not be there to date and all these things, I thought my life was ruined by moving to West Lafayette. My dad had been asked to come up and interview by a liaison man, professor, between Purdue and the different high schools in Indiana. And he had wanted to arrange an appointment for my dad to be interviewed by some people up here, and so Dad did. And he was offered a job on staff as a professor, assistant professor at that time. Herb had gone to war. He was a year older than I, and he went overseas. He came back safe and sound, and he had brought a friend of his and come up to see me for the first time after I had the first Christmas that he had been up when we first moved. I had gotten the friend a blind date for that night, but had thought we'd go bowling in the afternoon. We were waiting for an alley at Purdue Union, and it was going to be a long wait. 5 fellas came in, and I knew one of them, and he said he knew a bowling alley over in Lafayette, and he thought we could get right in. He said, if I call, would you want to meet us there, and you can bowl an alley and we'll bowl an alley, and divide up some of the numbers, and we'll still have time to do it. And I said, oh, that'd be great. Jack called over there. They said we could have 2 alleys immediately, and we went right over. And Bill only bowled 1 game because he didn't have enough money, he felt, so he said he'd keep score. Well, by his keeping score, we talked back and forth while others were bowling, and so I got to know him a little bit. And they were having a pledge dance come up at his fraternity. He had joined, and so he called and asked if I would be his date for that dance. And we started dating off and on for a while, and then we started dating regularly. And after I graduated, Bill still had his master's, his senior year master's and doctorate to get, and we were married when I graduated. So he was going to school, and I was teaching school at good old Morton School in West Lafayette. And I taught there then for 3 years, and that's where I got my teaching and enjoyed it so much. And my mother gave me something to remember the bowling alley by.
Did you like him right away?
I liked him right away. Of course, it was fun to go to a dance right away with him. And we spent quite a bit of time. He was a good talker, had a great sense of humor. And we had a very nice time at the dance. So yes, I liked him right away. My mother also liked him, and she let me know that she did. She kept notes in the refrigerator of what he could have and could not have to eat. We lived at home, or I lived at home, until, let's see, we were married at Thanksgiving, and then we got our apartment was ready for us at the first of the year. And so we lived at my home for that long. In the apartment, there were 2 other teachers from Pembroke School that lived there. They were just 2-room apartments with a bath and a walk-in closet, and the bed was in the living room, and $80 a month. So we were doing fine, and but one time I was in a wedding of a friend, of course a friend, and the people that were in the wedding decided that they were going to Turkey Run after the wedding and have a picnic. And so the one that I had walked down the aisle with, I'd never met before, but he was a very friendly guy, nice guy. And he asked if I wanted to go along, and I said, yes, that sounded like fun. Well, Mother, that night, Bill, without letting me know, it was summer vacation, and he had come up to surprise me, and I was off with this other fella. And she was sitting with her head above the couch at the window, and I knew something was wrong because I wasn't being real late or anything. And I walked in and she said, Bill's in town. I didn't think you should go out with that boy because look what happened, Bill's in town. And so you can see that she liked him and thought this was all right that I was dating him. He accepted it, of course. He'd gone over to the fraternity house and was visiting and was fine and had no qualms about my being off with the fellow at all. But I think we were just beginning at that time to go really steady.
Were you surprised when he asked you to marry him?
We were supposed to be going to a wedding of a sorority sister, and this was not good of me. I was supposed to be at the punch bowl at the reception. And so Bill was invited too. They knew him as well. And we were on our way, and he said, how would you like to go pick out a diamond instead of go to the wedding? And I said, I'd love it. And I figured there would be someone else who would have to serve that punch. And he had traced down a jewelry store that people seemed to have confidence in, and I don't even remember where it was. And we went there. I said I didn't want to choose my ring, and so he had chosen this. He had chosen, you know, whether I wanted gold or silver or white silver or platinum. So I sat in the car, and he went in and chose the diamond with the help of the man that knew all about them, and chose the setting, and they sent us out for a complimentary dinner. And so we went off to the dinner, came back, and I received my diamond. And we stopped on the way home to show it and tell his mother and dad, and then came back and told my mother and dad.
And you never made it to that wedding?
Never did.
That's amazing. Do you think God brought you and Bill together?
I do, because
Okay, so
well, a lot of things, but they I think we're all, combined with God in God's way. But he wouldn't have ever been at Purdue. I wouldn't have been at Purdue. My dad, when they came down and asked him to come up and interview at Purdue, had planned to go to Cornell. And he was unhappy because he had been high school principal, and the superintendent had become ill in the year, and so Dad had also taken on his responsibilities. And then and it turned out he did not come back. And when they decided to do the job, whoever the board, I guess, who was choosing the new superintendent, told Dad they would appreciate it if he didn't apply, and they wanted him back as principal, but they didn't think they wanted him as superintendent. And he felt that he had been getting his doctorate at night in school in Indianapolis, but he didn't have it, and so that made him unhappy that they wouldn't give it to him because he didn't have his doctorate, but they thought he was good enough to do it for a year and a half, and he had done both jobs. And so he decided he was going to go to Cornell and get that doctorate. And that's when they asked him to come up and interview at Purdue. They found out that he was planning to leave. So he continued getting his doctorate. Purdue was very willing for him to get it, and he got it. I mean, they wanted him to continue and get his doctorate, and he did that and went in then as a professor with a doctorate. But I wouldn't have been here. I'd just been in the East someplace, and Bill wouldn't have been here because except for the war. And so there are so many if-onlys, but there are so many if-onlys in life all the way along. If Herb hadn't come up to see me after getting back from the war, and we hadn't going to go bowling, I wouldn't have met him for a long time, if ever. So, there are so many if-onlys on that.
And you think God orchestrates all those if-onlys?
Well, you definitely wonder how all of them happen. I don't know if all of them. I think you have to help, of course, as much as you can, but certainly some of them.
That's great.
And Bill doesn't think I would have, he's wrong. But he doesn't think if I had known him and he had not gone to college, which was the way his route was about to go, he doesn't think I would have looked at him twice. Well, I don't know about that. We don't know if he'd gone the other way. But I certainly am thankful, and I certainly thank God all the time for doing it, getting us together.
What advice would you give to seniors graduating from high school right now?
I think that they've got such a hard road. For one thing, when I was in school, you were sort of either a teacher, a nurse, a secretary. You didn't have all these opportunities to be anything that you want to be, or a homemaker. Those were kind of the choices. You didn't have people like you even that are preachers. Did they have any preachers back in the 1940s?
Female ones?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Probably not. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think it was just secretary, nurse, homemaker or teacher. And now then, look what they have to make a decision about. So I don't know. They don't rush into things, so I can't say that. Oh, I guess what I would say is try to be patient and try to look for and go into a job that you can enjoy, because no matter which job it is, you spend a lot of time at it. And I just think you need to love it or like it, at least.
When you go to heaven, what do you hope God says? You're standing at the pearly gates and God's letting you into heaven. What do you hope to hear?
Glad to have you back.